I'm Etzion from Haifa, Israel. Today is the 24th of August, 2024. As we have done before, we'll start with a musical piece which my band performed a few years ago. It's a nice shot that we see the band and the participants from view.
קונצ'רט פרלוד, משם אנחנו נשוט בתעלות ונציה עם הקרנבל מוונציה, אחר כך אנחנו נטפס על האברסט ונקנח במקצב הקומבנצ'ר. אז בבקשה.
Did it come? Did you hear it?
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Very good. What I want to share will continue with the story of Genesis. In a while, I was thinking to offer maybe a couple of stories, Baba stories. I was thinking to share why I've started all these sessions to begin with. A few months ago, I think it was already March, April, or before that, or January, I even don't remember by now. The 25 sessions by now were offered to the community. What there is to share. I felt the push or pull from Baba to share with the community many years ago. Maybe it was 20 years ago, while I was doing my work of erasing sanskaras. Baba, as I told you, started to teach me this science or art of the erasing sanskaras since 1976. Told it in former sessions. I got involved with some emotional and mental turmoil due to some work which I did for Baba, and I didn't understand, didn't know what to do with it. I tried a few methods to bring myself together and I failed, and then Baba stepped in and started to give me tutorials how to handle it. The bottom line is that most of us are well aware that we have to give everything to him, but it has to be done in a precise, proper manner, that collecting the sanskara, working on it. Sanskaras are actually memories which are constantly surfacing from the depth of the subconscious mind in the form of, in a way, pictures or visions, or often what I would experience. Often I was dealing with the negative sanskar, the disturbing sanskar, the form of the ugly creatures, to say the least. This kept on surfacing since Baba started to train me. And my first experiences with erasing sanskaras was actually a few months after he walked into my life, 1972. I spoke about this. I don't want to repeat it now. But while dealing with all these sanskars, I had to work on that particular issue, let's say, dealing with the sanskaras of the father. And you deal with this, you feel everything surfacing. And what I understood a long time later on, that when you're dealing with father, mother, the closest being to you, we have been dealing with all the fathers and mothers. We had been together since the creation, the beginning of creation. Also, each one of us was a father and mother to others. And now we have to unwind all these knots, all these complications and difficulties created through ignorance. And of course, this is a big question. How come the God, infinite God, is being manifesting as ignorant being and committing all kinds of strange acts due to ignorance? How come the God all-knowing becomes ignorant? This is the riddle of creation. This is our challenge to understand this. So my duty has been to work on this till everything became completely clear. I was working father, mother, brothers, sisters that didn't have this life, and schoolmates, children, all the situation, all the circumstance, Jews and Arabs whatsoever. Till I could feel inside myself the whole situation was resolved, with all the difficulties and wrong feelings, bad feelings with father, mother disappeared, and relearned how to share with them, even they all passed away, creating a loving relations. And thus, these connections were cleared, and they don't need to be repeated any longer. And thus, I kept on working with whatsoever was surfacing in my mind. That was my instructions. You don't dig, especially for the past, whatsoever first hand surfacing in your mind, work on it, give it to me till it will be erased as long as it takes. And this is work. And often it was a very excruciating, difficult work, dealing with all kinds of bad things. And eventually, Baba turned his key, presumably, and I had to deal with things which were already beyond the human endurance for his own reasons. He presumably decided, presumably due to the nature of my resignation to him, that he can do it and I will survive the odds somehow. And during this period, was actually physically being held a few times. I felt that hands are holding my arms. You can see the indentation in the flesh. You could see the pressure of invisible hands holding you. And due to my experience of him, in the very beginning, all these later on experiences looked to me as trifles, not significant, belong to the, what I would call later on, the kindergarten phase of spirituality. But it came from him because that's the way he wanted it, that he is playing his game. Over the years of this process, it took me about 15 years, from 76 till 91, to settle, to observe and get established. It took many years, ups and downs, painful difficulties, etc., etc. And after 15 years, it started to flow naturally, more or less. By today, the process is there, presumably over the years. What was developed, automatic system within my subconscious mind, which each time whatsoever sanskar, which is an energetic wave, enters the mental realm or the emotional realm or the heart realm, automatically being erased. But of course, sometimes the circumstances, this and that, difficulties, that I have to become consciously aware and to do the work consciously, working with it until it comes to fruition, until the whole thing is being dissolved. Over the years, like every 10 years, I would receive an insight or two as some kind of prasad from him, as you can call it encouragement or whatever it is. What's happening with this? I presume people entering this phase of work and due to the nature of the elements or figures emanating from the conscious mind, which we created over eons of ignorance, it is quite devastating to look at what we have done in ignorance. So without the support of the divine being, the perfect master of the avatar, it's almost impossible to handle. It's too overwhelming. This has been my experience. And after many years, I think it happened 15, 20 years ago, once I experienced Baba. When I experience him, I see his face, his expression tells a tale, and this expression said like this. Often when I experienced him, he was often very serious mood, and sometimes he was happy, jovial, but most of the time has been very serious. And this time he looked very grave, and expression said like this. You look at his face, and he tells the tales that million words cannot tell. I've never given to me so fully to humanity like in this Advent, and most of the people are losing it. Don't take advantage of it. It felt like a very serious message to the entire community. They're playing on the edges, getting involved with all kinds of circumstances and situations that is none of our business, especially backbiting, which is one of the worst things to do. Getting involved with politics, this is good and this is bad. And I see it all the time with my friends on Facebook, all the time judging. These are the good people, these are the bad people. This is a good nominee for the presidential elections, this is a bad guy. We like this one, we don't like this one. We don't know what's going on behind the veil. We have no idea what is good and bad. We can bring the example of Hitler, which is many of us hate. And the Mandali were abusing Hitler during the 40s in Baba's presence, and he listened to it. It's in Lord Meher, and he stopped them and he said, you don't understand anything what's going on with all this. And he said, specifically, my nazar is on Hitler. And he said, Hitler is a madman, but he's doing my work, and we don't understand what is behind the veil. He didn't say it exactly as I'm saying, but the gist of what I've understood about this particular issue. But well, later on, when I was considering it, and you can say that I'm a Holocaust survivor, Hitler and his Germans, the Nazis exterminated all my family in the Western Europe, Eastern Europe at that time, and millions of others, as well as many millions of other human beings all over the planet during to this war. But what I understood later, and also Ehud spoke about this, that the people who went back through the chimneys of the concentration camps came back on the spiritual path. So what happened, that for many people, most of their unnatural sanskars were erased due to this acute suffering under the supervision of the avatar himself. When avatar supervises such events, what is his concern? That the beings who are suffering, that their subconscious mind will be erased, and then they can re-enter the spiritual path. And one day, while I was doing this work, dealing with one issue after another, Mr. Hitler enters my consciousness. So I told Baba, what about this thing? What I'm supposed to do about this? And I got as if, I think, you decide what to do with him. Baba was telling me, you decide what to do with him, but I'm just a guy. I'm not advanced soul, not seer, I don't know. So I told him what I'm telling you is that I don't know. So he telling me, answer is, you decide. Decide what to do with this guy. So I started to think. Looking at the characteristics of this person, I was wondering to myself, what if this person would be re-established on spiritual path? I could see his qualification, his magnetism, his influence of the multitudes. And after 15 minutes, I told, my conclusion was if this personality would come back to the spiritual path, he can render work for you, for Baba, or the spiritual hierarchy, that no saint can do. That was my decision. Of course, since I would have the opportunity to take revenge of him and let him suffer for the rest of eternity, sending to the outer darkness, so he will crunch his teeth to the end of time. As if I was given this opportunity, this or that. So I felt. So I felt that if this guy will be reestablished to the spiritual path and serve the Lord, and if you see that hundreds of millions of people were relieved from their sanskars due to his, it's not his, it's the whole, what happened, then what is good and bad? If people are being killed and they enter the path, which otherwise they won't be able, so this is a good thing. So what we understand as humans, what is good and bad? Okay. I used to write Baba stories in the past. As I said, we will continue with Genesis with plenty of time. And I want to share a small Baba story, which I wrote. Where is it? Here it is. This is Baba's story. If you enter my website, meherabadisrael.com, you enter English section. Actually, you can see it here. Okay, the material, the full material about the first Baba disciple in Israel, Keri Ben Shammai, and all kind of material. For example, the 6 volumes of Upasni Maharaj are online. Here, maybe it's the only place you can see it or read it and download it. And all kinds of stories, and of course we have a Hebrew section with all kinds of things. So this is a Baba story, which relates actually to the very beginning of my time with Baba in 72, 73, 74. The 1 gram a Baba story. Have you heard about a story which is completely false and completely true at the same time? As Barajar Eruch told Baba, with your grace, everything is possible. This particular episode happened during 1972, a few weeks after beloved Baba walked into my life and made me aware of who he is at once. And as if, like a vision, I was seeing an incredible giant. His legs were standing on earth. His knees were already shrouded by the clouds, so I actually could not see his face. The giant was holding the entire universe, the entire creation on his shoulders with no apparent difficulty. Have you seen those little ants which sometimes crawl between the hairs of your legs or hands? Really teeny, weeny ants. They must feel like walking in a jungle while walking on us. And so I felt standing on the toes of that great giant being, feeling helpless and hopeless. What a worthless creature. The giant was holding millions of tons in one hand, maybe billions of tons, zillions, who can tell? I looked at myself, poor me. How much could I take? 1 gram? Hardly. And a thought crept into my mind. Can the giant hold all this weight forever? What if, just if, he will give in? What if my 1 little gram would be the last straw on his back? And I became extremely worried for the well-being of my beloved. Mind you, I wasn't a spiritual zero. That would be a good start. I was minus 100 spiritually. And first I had to climb to the zero level. But this is another Baba story altogether. So I started to lift my little 1 gram of responsibility, just one little speck of the creation dust which burdens my beloved. And I kept on exercising, lifting this weight, just 1 gram, which was not so easy. And when I felt eventually quite comfortable with my little 1 gram of responsibility, I said to myself, why shouldn't I remove 1 gram of weight from my beloved's shoulder? If I can lift 1 gram already, why not 2? And added 1 more gram, and later on more, and a few more till this day. And you know what happened? One day I saw him face to face, and I must confess that I didn't climb to such a lofty heights. I haven't at all. But he, most likely of sheer amusement, took fancy of this little ant trying to help him with his work and lower himself to my level. So as you see, the story is completely false because it never really happened. Completely true, as it is happening all the time. You do care for unburdening your beloved. I'm sure you all do. By His grace, everything is possible. This is my story of the little gram. Hope many of us are feeling like very comfortable about the situation. We are protected. The Lord is with us. And often we find myself, instead of holding to his dharma, and I said it once, instead of holding his dharma, we're holding our underwear. It's not a picnic to hold on to the beloved, but it is possible for each one of us. What I understood, the gist of why most people, many, are losing the game due to all wrong doings. Over the years, what I understood while doing this work, that the goal has been for us at the moment, not goal realization, but to reach a state where we don't keep any grudge whatsoever against anyone or anything in our subconscious mind. This is the main work. This is what's happening. And it took me a few decades to more than 20, 25 years to understand this consciously. So when I started this work, I had no idea whatsoever where it leading to. But what I've realized later on that if I reach a state of non-hating anyone whatsoever in the universe, no matter what the reason is, then I can establish a real friendship with the avatar. Is love personified. How can I establish a relationship with the divine beloved if I keep a grudge against one of his beings, no matter what the reason is? And what came to me later on that we all here in this Advent, any person on earth, he doesn't have any grudges in his subconscious mind or conscious mind against anything or anyone, will enter the realm of perfect love, which is the realm of the avatar himself, without climbing on all these endless spiritual ladders, which, to my humble understanding, God realization is just the beginning of the infinite journey to the divine beloved. So in this Advent, he offered each person to come to his aura, his divine, the realm of divine love, and there is only one condition, that we don't keep any grudges. And when we face the gate to this realm, it's of course a metaphor. In the gates, there is a blind watchman. Why is blind? Meaning he is no respecter for persons. Suppose one of a precious Monday will come inside with a grudge. So he doesn't know who comes, but he has a good nose, a special nose to smell grudges. And if you have a grudge, you are being repelled from the realm. Doesn't matter who you are. And this is a real tragedy. And the only real tragedy I can say is this humanity of those people who were given this opportunity, throwing it to the dust due to their constant judgments and criticism, etc., etc. So keep only this issue, stay away from all these haters, don't criticize, don't complain, don't condemn, focus on the divine beloved only, and make sure they don't keep any grudges in your heart, and you will win the game. That's what it is. That was what I want to share with the community. So good luck to everybody. And I will go back to Genesis. I believe from where we stopped. The book of Genesis is I think, to my experience, is the greatest masterpiece ever written on the motif spiritual states of consciousness. This is the greatest research in psychology ever given to humanity. Everything is being contained here, as I said in the beginning of these sessions. And you can find these sessions in the archive of the Baba Zoom, the 3 or 4 sessions before. And each time we meet, I will give you a portion of this while sharing other Baba anecdotes about all kinds of things as things come up. In the beginning, I tried to explain the nature of the Hebrew verses, which is not possible to translate. All the great scholars of the world, Jews and non-Jews, agreed that the book of Genesis is the greatest book ever given to humanity. Not only Genesis, the entire Bible, the entire Hebrew Bible. The language is simply sublime, supremely sublime, and I'll try to explain the Hebrew verses as much as I can. Reading it, the article which I wrote about this, which I started to write it in Meherabad, 2006, I explained it before. The book was giving as flowing images, which the masters later on, due to the fall of man and the spiritual heights of real experience, they started to write down, to portray the experiences as words. But when you read the words, you don't have the experience. The ancient seers, the ancient call it, the people who were exercising the spiritual path, and this was done mainly in the first temple of Jerusalem, which was a house of initiation. We think that its main importance was to slaughter animals, but we will later on in this article, we will deal why this phenomenon of slaughtering animals, but the main issue was to train the people to advance on spiritual planes and become prophets. Prophets are not people who know what's going to be, but they have the communion, a direct communion with divine hierarchy, and the bring to the physical realm the wish and will of the divine hierarchy. The prophets become part and parcel of divine hierarchy. This is a mission of humanity, to reestablish the connection between the spiritual realms and the physical realm that the fall of man broke. This what happened. And we are going to deal with all these things. And we reached this stage in our journey before. We'll continue reading it. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. This is a creation of life on earth. What I explained in the beginning is that God, in Hebrew Elohim, in plural, is who we are. We are the divine beings who enter the creation we started, or whatsoever we witness has been our own creation as soon as we started to move. And God created great wealth, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. In the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Now a day in Genesis is a period of creation, not necessarily a day, is like our day, 24 hours. Some of the sages, this is their interpretation. I'm not going to get into it. We actually create the living creatures upon the earth. Let's look at this phenomenon as an internal happening. All these creatures symbolize thoughts and feelings within us that keep on solidifying. Any thought and feeling create an animal inside us. These animals act in the awake consciousness, and later on, it should be they. I found a mistake, can you believe? They think and markets are corrected later. Thank you. They sink into the subconscious mind and finally die, and their skeletons sink to the darkness of the subconscious mind. Similarly to what is happening externally upon Earth. What science will say about such thing, I think it's a mistake if I read it 20 times, I don't believe it. I'll correct it later. Is not hard to imagine, scorn and contempt. But science doesn't know what lies behind the phenomenon of life. The materialistic point of view of science is self-defeating and blocks deeper vision. Science is actually a magnification of the senses, building instruments in order to accurate the results of its perceptions. But the senses are a byproduct of the creation. They can never perceive what created the senses. We did evolve from lower grade creatures. The lower creatures are actually the solidification of our thoughts. We are the gods who create. We create with the power of our thinking whatever exists. The entire creation which surrounds us, that seemed to be external, was created through our actions in ancient living episodes. Since it took eons and eons, and Baba said in the Lord Mayor, if I'm not wrong, the creation in the trends to say that this age of this creation of ours, 13 billion years, and this is what science concluded in the past decades, since they discovered the evidence of the Big Bang, which was happened about 13 billion years ago. The internal activity within us created the external world as it appears before our eyes in this phase. I must ask you pardon, I must stop for a minute for something. Just a minute, I'll be back in a minute. Sorry, I had to take care of something. It's going to wait. The internal activity within us created the external world as it appears before our eyes in this phase. The inner desire, which has been percolating within us to know, kept on wearing all sorts of forms in the struggle to find the shape through which we can express ourselves fully. In everything that exists acts a conscious force. There is a spark of consciousness in everything that exists. An ant gets scared when it is being pushed. Some kind of feeling and consciousness exists within it to a certain extent. The greatest miracle appears here of no explanation, that of the appearance of individual life. If the cosmos is infinite, how come the infinite breaks apart and be revealed in endless individuals? The individual begins to manifest already in the stage we call an atom, isn't it? Maybe even before that, the electron. Every atom is actually a unique individual being, and maybe it is possible that this entity appears in what science discovers as atomic particles. Now what we can do, the science what we can do is it can identify, select one atom as if to give it a name or a number. They can number and name individual atoms and can recognize it again. These are all individuals. The essence of creation is individuality and motion. These phenomena generate what we call consciousness. Thus, consciousness exists already in the most rudimentary particles. The notion that consciousness appears only faintly in living creatures and fully in human beings and doesn't exist in the inanimated kingdoms is false. So it should be corrected also. It is not possible that consciousness will be created at a certain advanced stage while it doesn't exist in former stages. This awareness demands a revolutionary thinking in the human mind. There is no such thing as something devoid of life and feeling. Something within us lost the capacity to feel and know this. Possible that once we were endowed with the consciousness to a certain degree, because to ourselves to lose this mental state. The fall of man is actually the fall that we deliberately chose from the spiritual awareness to physical confinement. We did it on purpose, deliberately, all of us. This will be explained later on. The book of Genesis explains all the in and outs of creation, why all these things are happening, have happened, and how to resolve it, how to reconstruct humanity back to its stage, which is open today. We are not doomed, as some believe, as some religions said. We have this original sin and we are doomed and we cannot get out of it. That's it. It's total nonsense. This loss of the sense that everything is alive and has feelings symbolizes a deep fracture in the human state of consciousness, fracture that exists for many thousands of years. The Torah came to heal this fracture. Meaning of the Torah is a directive for the spiritual path, showing the direction. The consciousness which appears and expresses itself through minerals and living things seek higher forms of expression. An impulse to achieve perfect state of consciousness has been working within us consistently. It is an embedded subconscious impulse from the very beginning for our existence as individual beings. This impulse causes us to seek the answers in higher and more complex bodies. A living being, individuality contains feelings, emotions, and sparks of thinking. The order of appearance of the living things is equivalent to the common concept of evolution. But here the aim has been to view the appearance of things as an expression of states of consciousness materializing in bodies. The inner effort to achieve consciousness generates a long train of states of consciousness, which are being expressed in the physical world through endless forms, which we refer to as living beings. In the stages we name as animal kingdom, we can already discover various states of consciousness. The animal kingdom is based on the former state of consciousness in animate things, former states of consciousness that of the plant's state of a manifestation of lower states of consciousness. The plant is not an inanimate thing devoid of feelings, some kind of advanced mineral composition, but the sum total of the subconscious efforts which the minerals which are situated in the lower realms generate in order to achieve a higher state of consciousness, and these concentrated efforts of the plants generates eventually what we call living beings. Their main characteristic is self-motion. which the plant kingdom is devoid of. If we considering deeply into the structure of all that exists, then all things have a body made of long line, but hands and legs stem out, an opening for receiving food and an outlet for excretion. In the plants, the legs and hands are the branches and the roots. The plant absorbs its nutrients through its mouth, roots, and excretes through the branches and the leaves. The plant is a man upside down. Baba portrays it quite beautifully in God Speaks. But just for the record, while I was writing all this, I didn't keep any book open before me, and I didn't quote from God Speaks. It's true that I read God Speaks, but what I was writing here, each time I read the Hebrew verse, stream of thoughts started to emanate from Baba as in form of inspiration, and I had to write these streams of thoughts, and this is what came. So if you tell me that I'm quoting God Speaks, it might be true, because that's the way Baba himself influenced me to do. All that exists in the sum total of the subconscious efforts of previous systems of life in order to achieve the state of full consciousness. Whatsoever that surrounds us is due to our past actions. All the animal and plants are the solidifications of our thoughts. We have to nurture good and beautiful thoughts which will create beautiful plants and creatures. These dwell within our subconscious mind, in the internal ocean. And we have to learn how to handle all this. We have to learn to cultivate or destroy what was created in such a way that they will be transformed in the ladder of spiritual evolution, not to enable them to die and sink in the darkness of the deep. Then it is too late. What we witness upon earth is a result of ignorant actions of the human race over very long periods of time. Maybe I'll continue for a little bit longer. So we'll have at least a full hour. Actually, I don't have any limit. We can speak 2 hours, but I think it will be too strenuous. What we have been sharing is quite intense and takes time to absorb what I'm offering, what has been offered here. So I would humbly recommend to listen to these talks a few times, or also listening and viewing it a couple of times to learn, to absorb, and to see what is being shared with the community. And God said, let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so, and God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after the kind. And God saw that it was good. Now, each time in the creation when God said, God in Hebrew is Elohim in plural. And what does it say here? God in singular is wrong. There are many mistakes in the translations that the translators didn't understand because they didn't know. They didn't know the real Hebrew. It has to be gods, and the gods in small g, who we are the gods who emanated from the infinitude, and we started to create. As soon as we started to move In the creation, we started to create. What movement produces? Sound. What sound produces? Consciousness. We speak, communicate with sounds. Otherwise, what? We won't understand anything. And this communication is a low level of communication. Because the higher levels, we don't speak, but we share images, like a moving picture, as if you go to a cinema, a movie, but it's this movie, you don't just see pixels on the screen. You're inside the picture and living it, experiencing the situation with the sound, the smell, the touch, and everything, even if these circumstances happened 13 billion years ago. You really experience it. This was totally lost. The sum total of the plant kingdom is an animal. Again, this is from God Speaks by Baba. I assure that nothing which was written here was due to my how the searchers are walking. You see them surrounded by endless books, and they're leafing through the books all the time and bringing it together to build their feathers. This is not the way it was working here. Everything which I was sharing with you came through the inspiration of Baba himself. It's my personal experience. So you can make out of this whatsoever you want, but when you will look at it deeply, you will see the logic and the sense that a logical line was discovered in all these otherwise strange stories. The states of consciousness that we have developed gave birth to the forms of the various living beings. The living beings are echoes of the inner states of consciousness. They are actually the solidification of our internal mental processes. When an animal dies, its remains build the geological layers. Lime rocks, for example, are an accumulation of animal bones, which hardened over very long periods. If you can imagine these accumulations of rocks to the internal subconscious mental layers, then it is very difficult to break these rocks to something softer and more flexible in order that we can excrete them. These hard layers enslave the human consciousness and radiate constantly emotional waves which force the human being to act irrationally. The mission of the Torah has been to eliminate the sinking of the animal skeletons at the bottom of the ocean of the subconscious mind, to prevent the accumulation of layers in the darkness of the deep, and to neutralize them when they are already formed. We stop here till next week. I mark it for you. What we can see is that the Torah here is speaking about the formation of unnatural sanskars being solidified. Our subconscious mind is very hard stones and rocks within ourselves, and which we eventually cannot clear by our own efforts. Okay? And I'm going to terminate the recording, and if you want to share,